Hello guys, I hope you all are doing good. I am Vishali Gikan and we are discussing the VLSI technology. In that we are discussing the ion implantation, and today in this video we are going to analyze the ion implantation process in detail. So we are going to understand all of the measurements related to the ion implantation. I hope you all have seen the previous videos related to the ion implantation. If not, it is highly recommended that you go back and watch the previous videos again and then come to this video, because if you don't know what is ion implantation, what is its process, what are the various hardwares required for this ion implantation process, then you won't be able to understand the measurements. We are going into the advanced analysis of the ion implantation, and for that it is highly recommended that you know all of the basic concepts. Okay, so now if you have already seen the previous videos, you know what is the process, what is this word meaning, and now after that you know the hardwares. Okay, so as you know the hardwares, and you know there are a lot of hardwares used, and this process is costlier than the diffusion process. Both of these processes are making the doped region inside the semiconductor, but this ion implantation process, because of the use of highly mechanical structures and very efficient hardwares, it is very costlier than the diffusion process. Okay, so now we are going to analyze this process in detail. In the previous video itself I have talked about the various type of structures that we can form with the help of ion implantation. Okay, we have talked about the well implantation. We are forming N well or P well with the help of ion implantation process. Okay, so there are some conditions associated with the well formation. Okay, whenever I am forming the well with this ion implantation process, I will be requiring higher energy and the low current. Okay, so higher energy is associated with the depth. So if I have higher energy, which means I will be having higher depth, and whenever I am forming the well, I will be requiring higher depth of this doped region. Okay, that we all know. If I require the well, if either it is P well or N well, in both of these cases I require higher depth. The depth should be more, and for that I am using higher energy, which is around in the mega electronic volts. Okay, now the current would be low because I don't want it to be a highly doped region. Okay, so it can be lightly doped region as well. For that I require low current of the order of 10 raised to power 13 per centimeter square. So it is a lightly doped region. I don't require the N plus or P plus region, I just require N region or the P region. For that I am using the low current. Okay, so this thing must be clear now, why I am using the higher energy and the low current. When I discussed these concepts in the previous video, some of you were confused that why I am using the high energy and why I am using the low current. And to make this clear, I am going to tell you all of these things in all of the processes now. So I hope now you understood why in the well implantation I am using high energy and low current. Now coming to the threshold voltage adjust implantation. In the VT adjust implantation I am using the low energy and the low current. Why I am using the low energy? The low energy because the depth is not more. It is a very thin type of doped region, thin layer of the doped area that we are forming. Okay, so you can see it here. So here you can see we have a very thin layer, and for that I am using the low energy. It should not be a very highly doped region, it could be a lightly doped region also. So for that I am using the low current. Okay, so now this is also clear again in the VT adjust implantation why I am using low energy and the low current. Now in the lightly doped drain implantation, or what we call it as LDD implantation, we are using again the low energy and the low current. Current is of the order 10 raised to power 13 per centimeter square. Again we are not going to have a very highly doped region. So N region or P region we can have with the help of 10 raised to power 13 per centimeter square current, which is low current. Now we are using the low energy 10 kilo electronic volt, which is used for the very thin layer of the doped region. I don't want a very high penetration of this doped region inside the semiconductor. So for that I am using the low energy. Okay, so this thing must be clear for now for LDD implantation. Now coming to the source and drain implantation. What kind of source and drain we want? Should it be very deep inside the substrate? No, because it is formed inside the N well. So here this N region will be very thin, and for that I am using the low energy of the order 20 kilo electron volt. Okay, now we are using the high current. Why high current? Because I will be requiring the N plus region or the P plus region for the source and drain. Okay, so now here I will be requiring the high current of the order 10 raised to power 15 per centimeter square. Okay, so now up till now all of these things are clear, that how I am choosing the energy and current in each one of the ion implantation process. So now this is the summary of all of the processes that we have discussed till now. In the well implantation we are having high energy and the low current. In the source or drain implantation we are having low energy and high current. In the VT adjust implantation or the threshold voltage adjust implantation, I am using low energy and low current. In the lightly doped drain implantation, again I am using the low energy and the low current. Okay, so now all of these things are now clear. I hope your why is also clear now. Okay, so now coming to the process issues. There are some issues associated with the ion implantation process. We all know it is a costly process, and when we have these issues, the output would be very varying. Okay, I don't want a varying output. I don't want my output to be desirable output that I actually desired, but it is varying from the actual output due to these issues. What are the issues? First issue is wafer charging, second is particle contamination, elemental contamination, and after that we have the process evaluation. So now in the wafer charging step we have the charging of the wafer. Actually I am using the ions for the ion implantation. I am not using the boron atom, I am using the boron ion. Okay, I am not using the phosphorus atom, I am using the phosphorus ion. So now when I am sending these to the wafer, and now when these ions are going to the wafer, they are going inside the wafer, they are making this wafer positively charged. Okay, so this is a very big issue that we have, because I don't want my wafer to be charged. Also we have the silicon dioxide layer. Okay, so there will be the breakdown of the gate oxide. Okay, this is also undesirable. Actually the dielectric, like the silicon dioxide, is having a very good dielectric strength, which is around 10 megavolt per centimeter. But if I have a very thin layer of this dielectric, if I have the silicon dioxide which is very thin, in the gates we are using a very thin layer of silicon dioxide. If I have only 100 angstrom thick silicon dioxide, then the breakdown voltage become really less. The breakdown voltage for the 100 angstrom thin silicon dioxide layer is around 10 volt, which is the normal operating voltage. Okay, you can understand, if I am just supplying the 10 volt, silicon dioxide will be breakdown. Okay, this is a very big issue. Now if I have the gate oxide layer, it is having the thickness only 30 to 35 angstrom in 0.18 micrometer device. So you can understand the gate oxide is getting breakdown at a really small voltage like 3 to 3.5 voltage, which is very less. So I require better charge neutralization system. This is a very big issue. Now the antenna capacitor changing test structure can be used for the wafer charging monitoring. I need to know how much charge has developed on my wafer, and for that I am using the antenna capacitor changing test structure. Okay, now the ratio of the polysilicon pad area and the thin oxide area is called my antenna ratio, which is as high as 1 lakh is to 1. Okay, so the polysilicon pad area and the very thin oxide area, they are very much differing in their width. Okay, so now its ratio is 1,00,000:1, which is very high. The larger antenna ratio, the easier to break down the thin gate oxide. Okay, and you can see from here also, if my gate oxide is breaking down, I will be having wafer charging, which is again undesirable. So both of these factors are giving rise to the wafer charging. This is a very big issue. So you can see how we can have the antenna ratio, how we can find out. This is the top view. Okay, so you can see here, this is the top view and this is the side view. In the side view you can see this is the depth of the polysilicon layer. Okay, then we have the field oxide. Okay, and this is the gate oxide that we have. Okay, it is very thin as compared to the field oxide. Then this is my silicon substrate underneath it. Now coming to the second issue, which is particle contamination. We all know what is particle contamination. Now some of you must be confused that what is the particle contamination in the ion implantation process. I have already told you we were using mass to charge ratio to separate out the contaminant particles. Okay, but here there is an issue of the particle contamination. I am giving you an example to show you that how after using the mass to charge ratio also, then also we have this particle contamination issue. Okay, so if I have a very large particle which is present on the wafer surface during this ion implantation process, it will be obstructing the ions to go inside the wafer, and this is how it will be very harmful for this process of making the doped region inside the wafer. Okay, you can see it here. If I have a very large particle present on the wafer surface, if the ion beam is coming, so here you can see we don't have a full doped region that we actually desired. We have the partially implanted junction. Okay, this is my screen oxide that I am using. This is my photoresist and this is dopant. Okay, so now the dopant is going and covering the particle surface. It is not going inside the wafer that we actually wanted. So this is also a very big issue. Now it is there present in all of the types of implantation like VT adjust, LDD and source to drain implantation. It is causing the incomplete dopant junction, and here the large particles are blocking the ion beam, especially in the low energy processes. If I have a high energy process like the well implantation, in the high energy process the ion energy is so much that this small particle or this particle contaminant particle is not affecting my process. The ion energy is so much that it is easily removing these contaminants. Okay, but if I have low energy to my ions, these contaminants will be playing a big role in forming of the doped region. So I will be having incomplete dopant junction. Okay, incomplete doped region that we are forming. Okay, so it is harmful for the yielding process. The yield become very less if I have the very high contaminant particles in our environment. Okay, so now after the contaminants that are present nearby to the wafer, there will be some contaminants that are coming in the ions also. Okay, with the ions there are some contaminant particles. They are coming when the mass to charge ratio is not able to separate the contaminant particles. Okay, so we will be having the co-implantation with the intended dopant. The intended dopant is going, that is okay, but the contaminant particles are also going in the ion implantation process. How this happens? For an example, we have the 94 molybdenium ion. So we are taking the 2 positive molybdenium ion and I am taking the 11 BF2 positive ion. Okay, so now both of them will be having same mass to charge ratio. Okay, both of them having the mass to charge ratio equal to 49. So it is very difficult with the help of mass analyzer to separate both of them. I cannot separate both of them, so molybdenum is also going with BF3 ion. That is undesirable. So I am having the contaminant which is inside the ion beam only. In the ion beam I am supplying the contaminant. Now this molybdenum ion will go and it will be contaminating the doped region. Okay, so ion source can't use standard stainless steel, and because of that I will be having the higher contamination, have a heavy metal contamination of the molybdenum ion. A very high heavy metal contamination of the molybdenum ion if I am using the BF2 positive and if I am not using the standard stainless steel. Okay, so other materials such as graphite and tantalum are normally used. Now coming to the last part, that is process evaluation. Here we have three process evaluation methods. First is 4-point probe method, then we have thermal wave, and then we have optical measurement system, which is also called as OMS. We are going to talk about all three of them. So now 4-point probe method, I have already talked about it a lot of times. Now you know how it looks like. It has 4 probes and this is the reason it is called 4-point probe. Okay, now in the 2 probes I am supplying the current, and in the 2 probes I will be measuring the voltage. So if I know the current, if I know the voltage, I can divide them and I can find out the sheet resistance. V is equal to IR. Now if I know V, I know I can divide the V by I and I get to know the sheet resistance. Okay, the 4-point probe is a very good method to find out the sheet resistance. This 4-point probe method is performed after the annealing process. Okay, it requires a smooth surface. It requires the single crystal surface, so it is performed after the annealing process. It measures the sheet resistance, as I have already told you, and sheet resistance is a function of the dopant concentration and the junction depth. And now I know if I have a higher concentration of the doped region, sheet resistance will be lesser. Okay, so if I am going to find out sheet resistance, indirectly I am finding out what is the dopant concentration and what is the junction depth. Okay, both of them are related to the sheet resistance. So if I know the sheet resistance, I can make some conclusions or inferences about the dopant concentration and the junction depth. So it is commonly used to monitor the doping process. So you can see the 4-point probe measurements here. In the first and the 4th probe I am sending the current, and with the help of 2nd and the 3rd probe I am measuring the voltage. So this is my doped region. Over the doped region I have placed all of the 4 probes, and below the doped region I have the substrate. If I have a typical 4-point probe where S1 is equal to S2 is equal to S3, this distance between all of the probes is same, which is equal to 1 mm. So if the current is applied between P1 and P4, so the sheet resistance is equal to 4.53 V upon I. Now if the current is applied between P1 and P3, so with the help of this formula I can find out the sheet resistance. RS is equal to 5.75 V upon I. Now coming to the second method, which is the thermal wave system. Okay, so now here I will be using the argon pump laser, which is generating the thermal pulses on the wafer surface. Now we have the thermal pulses on the wafer surface. I need to measure them. Okay, so now helium neon probe laser measures the DC reflectivity and the reflectivity modulation induced by the pump laser at the same spot. So we need to know the DC reflectivity and the reflectivity modulation induced by the pump laser. Now the ratio of this OR, the reflectivity modulation, which is represented by OR, and the reflectivity, which is represented by R, the ratio of both of them is called the thermal wave. Okay, so the thermal wave signal OR to the R is related to the crystal damage, and this is how, if I actually know what is the thermal wave signal, I will be knowing what is the amount of crystal damage inside my wafer. So crystal damage is a function of the implantation dose. So this is how actually indirectly I am measuring the ion implantation dose. So now you can see this is my current, this is my time. So now this is the measurement of the R and this is my measurement of the OR. Okay, so now here I will be having a thermal wave signal detector. Okay, so now here I will be using a probe laser. The reflectivity will be measured with the help of thermal wave signal detector, and here we will be having the pump laser. The pump laser will be having some current which is going like in this manner. We will be having current for a specified unit of time, then we will be having the zero current. Again we will be having the unit current for the specified unit of time, and then the zero current. Okay, so now all of these are going to the wafer, and this is how I am calculating the OR to the R, which is the thermal wave signal. Okay, so I need to know the ratio of OR is to R. Okay, so now coming to the thermal wave systems calculation, this method is actually performed immediately after the implantation process. Okay, so if I am using the 4-point probe, I have already told you, when I am using the 4-point probe, I have to do the annealing first, but the thermal wave system can be immediately done after the implantation process. There is no need of annealing first. So it is a non-destructive method. There is no touch of the implanter with the wafer. Okay, so we don't have any physical touch, so there will be less contamination, and also there will be less destructions that are going to destruct my wafer. Okay, so it can measure the production wafers without actually going in the physical contact with the wafer. So 4-point probe is only good for the test wafers, because here I am actually contacting the wafer with the 4-point probes. Okay, so I cannot do it with the real chips. Okay, when I am actually manufacturing it, it is not a test wafer, then I will not be using the 4-point probe. There will be the possibility of crystal damage. The wafer will be getting damaged if these 4-point probes are going and touching the wafer. Plus there will be the contamination problem as well. Plus the thermal wave system is giving me the low sensitivity at the low dosage. Okay, so the drift of the thermal wave signal over time will be calculated. It needs to be taken as soon as the implantation finished. Okay, so as soon as the implantation is finished, I will be calculating the drift of the thermal wave. Okay, so now the problem with the thermal wave system is that we don't have very high measurement accuracy with the thermal wave system, because we are using the laser heating, which is not a very precise method for calculating the damage of the crystal. Okay, so here we will be having the laser heating, which will be relaxing the crystal damage. Okay, so it is not a very accurate method. So now I hope you understood the difference between the 4-point probe method and the thermal wave system. Now coming to the third type of system, which is optical measurement system. Okay, so which is also called OMS. So it is a transparent wafer coated with a thin layer of copolymer which contains energy sensitive dye. Okay, so this is the first step. We have a transparent wafer coated with the thin layer of copolymer. So now this copolymer will be having this energy sensitive dye. Now when I am having the ion implantation process, I know the energetic ion are colliding with the wafer. Now on the wafer we have the copolymer with the energy sensitive dye. Okay, so now when ions are colliding on this energy sensitive dye, so it will be detecting the energy, and now it will be breaking down with the help of the energy of the ion, because these molecules are highly sensitive to the energy. It is energy sensitive dye. So now it will be having the copolymer which was transparent. It will be becoming more and more transparent. So the higher the dosage, the higher will be the transparency. Photon count change before and after the implantation. Okay, so now this is how I am determining the dosage of certain ions at the certain energy. So I hope now you understood how, with the help of transparency, I am calculating the various parameters of the ion implantation in the optical measurement system, or the OMS. So you can see it here. We have this quartz halogen lamp. So you can see we are supplying the ions. Now we have this photo detector over here. So initially it was not very transparent, and after before implantation you can see it was not very transparent. After implantation it became transparent, and the PDI count on the photo detector will be increasing. So I hope now you understood all of the three types of processes for the measurement, and now you are in a position to now give your views about these three type of processes, how these three are different, which one is better according to you. Now you give your answer in the comment. So these are the references. These are really amazing books. You may refer these books and you will be finding these books really amazing. Okay, so in the next video we are going to talk about the safety measures that we take in the ion implantation process. Okay, so if you have any further doubt, you can put the doubt in the comment, and I will be trying to resolve your doubt as soon as possible. I hope you like this session. If you like it, please push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and also do share it with your friends. Thank you so much.